Where there's thunder, there's lightning. John Nada. So, two of the things that I've been thinking about here most recently are the ideas of change and the power of change, coupled with the alienation piece again that you've heard me speak about before on the program. And not so much alienation, but just in terms of people that are in your life for a season and then they go separate ways, either because of that, they get married, or you just grow apart, or the friendship just kind of runs its course. But the two are connected in terms of the fact that anytime that you are trying to change, or you're trying to become better, or you're trying to better yourself, you go through these growing pains, you go through these trials and tribulations. And that's one of the things that I'm noticing about life, is that with each passing year, with each passing month and all that, you still bring a lot of the same issues and a lot of the same problems from one year to the next. Now, you may solve a few of the problems or a few of the issues, but ultimately, there's always something to be dealt with. And so then you have to kind of figure out what you want to do with your life, or how you can set your life up to kind of maximize your ability to overcome these things and minimize their influence and their causing you issues in life. And what I've always said is that anytime that you follow somebody else's script, anytime that you do what somebody else, has in mind for your life, you're always going to be disappointed. And what I've found in my life is that there have been a lot of people that have disagreed with many of the choices that I've made. And for some of them for good reasons. And, at times I've made mistakes just as anybody else has made a mistake. But, I heard a quote several years ago, and I can't remember who it's by, but essentially saying that to go your entire life without making a mistake would be to live your life in such a careful manner, as to it have been that you never lived at all. In other words, there's no way that you can ever live life without making a mistake, at some point. I mean, even an inaction sometimes can bring about a mistake. So that being said, I've got a friend that's getting married pretty soon, and I've noticed as time has gone on, I hear from him less and less. And I suppose that's to be expected. And many of my other friends who've already, been married for several years or whatever, I hear from them rarely, if at all. And it's interesting that, my closest friend right now is a guy that, has been divorced for about a year. And I had another friend who really I considered more of a mentor than anything. He's a guy I've known for years. And he used to have he used to do ministry, and he used to have his own church. And he's considerably older now, of course, and hasn't done any kind of ministry, and hasn't pastored a church in probably about 10 years. And basically that friendship, I guess, has run its course. And a lot of that has to do with, the choices and the dreams and aspirations that I have for myself, didn't line up with what he wanted and what he thought I should do. Basically, he was wanting me to throw away everything that I've accomplished in the last, 5 years, and start all over down in the motherland, so to speak, and start a ministry with him there. And he had a house that, he owns and has rented it out for a couple of years, but he really kind of doesn't want to sell the house because he's afraid that if he sells the house, then the wrong person will get into it, and then, he's kind of stuck with them. He doesn't want people that are, doing drugs and that kind of stuff to end up, down the street from him. And that's pretty reasonable. But at the same time, he doesn't want to keep renting the house, because it seems that every time he rents the house, people stop paying rent, or they end up being, kind of trashing the yard and tearing up the interior of the house. All those things that, are the perils of renting a house. For anybody that's ever rented a house to people, they know that that's a pretty common thing. But he was offering to, I'm assuming, sell me the house for a decent price. The problem is that I would have a house, but I'd have no job. I'd have no income. I'd have no work that I could do in that area, unless I just completely went back through the process of getting the job that I have where I'm currently at down there. Where he's at is a lot of service oriented jobs and that kind of stuff, and there's not a whole lot of real careers. But you'd have to move all your stuff. You'd have to interview, and the process would just be, just to get basically the job that I already have. And because I wouldn't do that, because I wasn't interested in doing that, because I didn't feel like that was the path that I needed to go on. I noticed he brought it up several times, and so then I would start telling him about, well, this was kind of the idea that I had going forward with this, or I thought about doing this. Like for example, I thought about actually doing starting like a decon company, where you go in and you kind of decon places, crime scenes, places where there have been people that have lived there that were hoarders, old buildings that just need to be gutted and cleaned out and that kind of stuff. And that's something that you could really start anywhere in the country. And, I thought that was kind of maybe a compromise, that, I could go back to that area and be in that place and still have the ability to put food on the table. And he just didn't really say a whole lot. He wasn't really interested in it, just acted halfway mad. And then the next question was, well, I sent you this book a couple years ago. I don't know, it's been like 8 or 9 years ago. And can you send it back to me? By the way, I'm not feeling well. Which, over the years, he's claimed, a number of different illnesses over the years. And I've always been kind of dubious about his physical health issues. It's like every couple of weeks we would talk, and it'd be, I broke my rotator cuff, or I stubbed my toe and got sepsis, and just everything was just always just this dramatic thing. But usually it would be one or two. It would usually be one or two illnesses that were, that he would cling to, and so, and they were, the symptoms were vague enough to where, you didn't know whether or not he really had it or not. But he just kind of used it as an excuse to, well, I'm going to get off the phone now. And then, I didn't hear from him for a couple of days, and so what I'm getting at is I could tell that he was getting. Basically, what I took out of it was that the usefulness of my friendship had run its course, and since I wasn't going to come down there and help him start this ministry, that it was almost like it was a waste of time for him to talk to me. And he never asked me about my work. He never asked me about any of my military stuff when I was in the military. And really, he claims to be supportive of the military, and yet it was like, he didn't really approve of me having been in it at the time, even though it opened up a lot of doors and things for me, was what it seemed like. Well, then a couple days later, I just kind of called him because I was like, it was kind of bothering me, and I decided to call him out about it. Said, I basically feel like you're ducking me, and attempted to explain, why I got that impression. And it's like we've been friends at least 10 years, And it was like none of that mattered, you know. He immediately accused me of being, having PTSD. I had to have been drinking, because I called him out on what I thought was a legitimate thing, and I just simply, asked him, well, why is it that because I'm a veteran that if I have an opinion about something, or if I confront you with something, why is it automatically, because I have PTSD or because I have this issue or that issue, when you don't even know anything about, me as a, you know, you don't even really know all that much about my military experience because you never asked about it, and I don't know why, just simply because I have a strong opinion and I'm calling you out on something, that it has to be that either I'm drunk or I have PTSD, which none of those things, were true or even relevant to the situation. Now you may wonder, what's this got to do with MGTOW? What's this got to do with anything, Mr. Nada? And it's simply to point out that even people that have been longtime friends and people I considered mentors, they're eventually going to walk away at some point, it seems like. The only people that I really can count on, the only people that I know will be there, is my family. And that's more than what most people have. And the guy, really wouldn't listen to my point. He wouldn't let me, he didn't want to work anything out. He didn't want to salvage the friendship. He didn't want to try to reason together and figure out, well, why do you feel this way? And then explain, whether or not that was the case or not. And his way of deflecting from that was, well, I'm your elder, this, that, and the other. And that is true. I mean, you've managed to reach it to a certain, you've managed to reach, a certain age before I did, but I don't think that gives you any kind of clemency or absolution on explaining yourself, or at least wanting to work together. And it's almost like if a friendship doesn't function like a well-oiled machine, and there's any kind of maintenance that needs to be done, or there's any kind of work that should be done on it, then people just want to bail. And that's what relationships are. I mean, whether it's, with a friend, or, a friendship, or, your family, or whatever, from time to time, there has to be some maintenance. There has to be some work. Sometimes there's misunderstandings, but if it's worth it to you, if the person's worth it to you, if the friendship means anything, then you would be willing to work that out and do whatever it is that you needed to do to explain things to the other person, to at least hear their point out, to at least, hear them out, and not accuse them, of this, that, or the other, simply because, you got caught and you got called out, and the person is 100% right about their assessment, and you just don't want to deal with it. And that's what's frustrating. That's what's disappointing. But I say all that to say this, that anytime you try to change yourself, anytime you do what is good for you, and you try to better yourself, and you do what you think is the right thing for your life, there's always going to be somebody to disapprove of it. And that somebody may be somebody that you know very well. That somebody may very well be somebody that you've had a long-standing friendship with. And so it's not always just people that don't know you and don't know your story, but oftentimes it's people that do know your story, or at least should know your story. And, when the time gets rough, when the tides turn, they cut the rope and leave the anchor. And it's just very interesting who those people end up being. Now, I've got nothing against the guy. I wish him well. But, this is a guy that, about a month ago, he told me that he couldn't his wife couldn't see because she couldn't get the prescription. They couldn't afford the prescription for her glasses. So I sent him $100 in a card. And because I'm like, man, you got to get the glasses for your wife. She's got to be able to see. She's got to be able to drive to the store safely and that kind of thing. Because I care about the guy. And I thought that the feeling was mutual. But instead, he asked me about a book. Instead, of wanting to work things out, of wanting to try to salvage things, of wanting to try to understand my perspective. If I'm of no use, then there's no sense in continuing to talk to me, was basically what I got out of it. That's why it's important and imperative to go your own way or don't. Choice is yours.